Prepare to venture into the mysterious skies above Nevada, dear listeners, as we unlock the secrets hidden in the heart of Las Vegas. In a city where illusions reign, there's a private airline that defies the norm, operating from Harry Reid International Airport and disappearing into the unknown expanse just 45 minutes north. Enter Janet Aircraft, draped in red and white secrecy, shuttling staff into the enigma that is Area 51. Area 51 was brought into existence more recently under the Clinton administration in the 1990s. The Janet Aircraft has become the lifeline to one of the world's most covert military installations. Area 51, a name synonymous with intrigue, conspiracy, and tales stretching back to the Roswell era, stands silent in the Nevada desert, guarding secrets known to only a privileged few. If you're ever in the depths of Indeed.com and you come across a job title that subtly whispers, looking for a flight attendant for a discreet airline, well, that could be your gateway to the unknown. Join us as we navigate the skies aboard Janet's Boeing 737s that vanish into the secrecy that is Area 51. Strap in, my fellow adventurers, as we embark on a chilling expedition to the concealed corridors of the Nevada skies. Welcome to Destination-Aviation. Well, everyone, welcome back to the show. Glad to be here with you on what is Friday the 13th. I actually flew today on United Airlines to Las Vegas from the Chicago area. Pretty smooth flight, easy flight for the most part, was packed, as most flights are these days, and landed here at the Harry Reid International Airport. It's actually funny, I had a job interview at what was McCarran Airport, and this was some time back, many, many moons ago. And obviously I did not get the job, but I remember when I went in and did the interview for it, I said, hey, is there any truth to potentially that this airport is going to be renamed? And I was laughed pretty much out of the room. So as I traverse the airport, I do think about that comment, and now that they've adopted the new name. Things change, people change. I will say what doesn't ever seem to change is 3 out of 4 sinks in the airport not having soap. So whether you call it McCarran, Harry Reid, Las Vegas, just prepare to go to your 4th sink to find some soap to wash your hands. No, we actually ended up circling for a while because the airport was quote unquote at capacity by what the pilot said, at least with air traffic controllers. We were traveling, I think, about 10 minutes ahead of schedule when we arrived into the Las Vegas area. And as I spoke about before, I am here for the National Business Aviation Association Conference. I've talked to some people that are actually going to be out here, so I have some of our podcast stickers with us. I'm running into some people. Once again, always drop me a line at dapodcast85@gmail.com. Always love to talk shop on aviation. I'm actually recording this at the Verdara Hotel. I have a highway view that looks back towards the Luxor and Mandalay Bay, but I always try to get a view of, I was just about to say McCarran, but Harry Reid International Airport if I can, which highlights a little bit of what we talked about at the beginning of this episode. Is I am just fascinated with if you watched Airplane, the red and white airplane that kind of looks like a Tylenol. Let's get some pictures, boys. I just find it fascinating. Of course, when they flew the 737-200s with their blow dryer looking engines, the last time I saw one of those, I guess, would have been Janet. But when I worked in California, Sierra Pacific would come in often into the valley with, I think they were doing troop transports at the time, if I remember correctly. So they were chartering on Sierra Pacific. That gave an opportunity to actually see the 737-200 up close and personal. It is always great to see some of our older aircraft because you never know when it's going to be your last time to see it. So I arrived into Las Vegas this morning from Chicago, as I spoke about on United Airlines. I actually got in, did some work here, wanted to start this podcast, and of course all days, right? Friday the 13th in October, it's just an awesome day to start a podcast, especially considering our spooky vibes that we're going with this month. I did have some ambition. I've been hearing so many great things about the Spear, so I bought some tickets to go see U2. Great concert, but the venue is just awesome. If you have been on the fence or you're wondering about the Sphere and what they built here, the circular dome, it's like the first time you go to a concert and you don't fixate on the band, you fixate on the venue. There's just so much going on, and the roof looks like it's coming down at you. It's just an awesome venue. I highly recommend trying to get out here before U2 is gone. I think they have a 3-month stint here. If U2 is not your flavor, I'm sure that this place is probably going to bring in top talent artists. Put it on your list to go experience it. The U2 version of the show, they have a moment where they take the whole background and turn it into basically like if you removed the dome and you're looking at the Las Vegas Strip, and they take it down to the desert piece by piece and deconstruct the strip. It's hard to explain, but it's amazing. And I think in our world in aviation, Reed Airport is actually in there, and you can see them deconstructing, the tower and the airport back down to the desert. And they actually have cranes and stuff removing everything, and it looks like real life. It looks like what you see in those videos where they're building something over time with a crane, that they actually are removing everything. It's pretty awesome. Definitely, if you get a chance, come out here and check that out. Security is tight this year at MBAA. I think what we're seeing a lot over in Europe with environmentalists and painting of aircraft, I think they're concerned here. I feel like I would be surprised if there was a lot of that happening in Las Vegas. It seems like Las Vegas is not the type of city where people come for whatever climate justice or whatever their cause might be. It seems more like the spot where people come to, as they say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas type of activity. So it will be interesting as the week starts and continues on, especially with the static display for aircraft that they're going to have here, if anything does come of that. Like I said, I personally would be surprised if it did, but I guess you never know if maybe they're bussing in or something. But it looks like a lot of cool static displays this year, a lot of really good attendance. Maybe we'll run into some people here that are a fan of the show, or maybe not. And if not, maybe I shouldn't run into them because they may not want to run into me. They'll be like, "You're the guy on the podcast. I don't like you." Yeah, no, I don't know. Just some quick news. I couldn't try to get this episode out while we're here in Las Vegas. Like I said, I'm actually in my hotel room right now recording this. That 757, I actually sent it over for last week's podcast, and there was so much that I had sent over, I missed it. But the 757 that had the gear up landing in Chattanooga, Tennessee, you see some of the pictures of this aircraft. It's just amazing. It looks like this pilot and first officer did an amazing job. It basically looks like it glided itself off the runway. No fire, a little bit of smoke out the engines, according to the reports and what the newspapers published. So kudos to them and the crews for a quick response to this, and I'm glad everybody is safe on that front. I just want to touch briefly on, obviously the events everybody's seen that's been happening in Israel with Hamas. I actually have a friend who he did fly F-16s for the Israeli army. He now is actually doing other stuff in the United States. He has family members in the Israeli army. So tough times over there, just generally speaking. When I got on, my United today to come here to Las Vegas, the first kind of warning across the front that all flights have been suspended to that region. And if you're trying to connect back home, how to do that. So a lot of disruption there. For everybody that's suffering, thoughts go out to them. So we touched on a few things here in the news, as we try to just upfront usually in these podcasts. And now we want to get into our story. I think this is fitting. Obviously, I'm in Las Vegas. The Janet aircraft have fascinated me since I've been coming to Vegas. Most conferences lead to Vegas, or at least throughout the year you're going to come here probably once. So I find myself in Vegas often. It's a love it or hit it town probably for most people. I say that I'm probably a little bit in the middle. Depends on the trip. Some trips I really enjoy, some trips I don't. If you've come to Vegas and you haven't had a chance to explore anything outside of the Strip, I highly recommend it. Going to the Hoover Dam, to the mountain region to the west here as you get back towards California. If you're into hiking, there is the Carroll Lombard crash site. that you can actually that you can hike to outside of Las Vegas. Las Vegas, of course, has attracted many celebrities over the years. In some cases, they never make it home. In 1942, a plane carrying Carole Lombard, she was a famous movie star and the wife of Clark Gable, crashed into the east face of Mount Posies. The site now is merely a footnote in history, and as, of course, this podcast, visited occasionally by plane crash buffs, and of course, Carole Lombard fans, and anybody that's tough Las Vegas hikers. I have not hiked out there. I hear it is quite the hike. So if you find yourself in the Las Vegas area and you're feeling ambitious, take a hike out there and find the aircraft. I'm going to stick back here for now on the strip. Anybody that goes out and does that, feel free to shoot a photo over of you with the hiking out to the aircraft. We'll make sure to highlight it. So I think as we go into this podcast, probably one of the things we should start with, and I'm assuming most people know, but if you don't know, what is Area 51? There's so much information out there on Area 51. If you listen to the Joe Rogan podcast, you've probably heard the name Bob Lazar and the Area 51 flying saucers. You haven't gone on and seen that podcast. It is interesting. A skeptic like myself started to say, hey, maybe there's some truth when you hear Bob speak, but then they created this movie, and the director, Jeremy Corbell, I think is his name, gets on, and I just went back to what I kind of assume any of those stories usually are. I take everything with a grain of salt unless there's absolute proof. And he very much seems like he's in everything for the money. Nevertheless, though, it is a very interesting story Bob has. I think this director kind of downplayed, unfortunately, the whole interview for me as a listener. I think other people responded to it. I've talked to people in our industry that have found it captivating, fascinating, and really believe in what's happening here. I always tend to go to those stories that seem reputable. Like if you've looked into it, was F-18 or F-16 pilot off of California that saw the tic-tac shape going across the Pacific Ocean. Reports like that, I think, where there's not really things to gain, very interesting to me of questioning what that is. And of course, in that case, there's also radar videotape from the aircraft itself of this situation. Area 51 has so much on it out there. It's been shrouded in mystery for decades. Of course, it's rumored alien secrets held within the remote desert site. And with the age of social media, of course, that gets a reboot. If you go back and listen to our podcast where the flying saucer was originally coined from our friend Smith Arnold in 1947, the year of the flying saucer, where he saw pancake-shaped flying obstacles over Mount Rainier. It really started the craze. But that same year is when the Roswell crash happened, and we started hearing all the reports of what's a weather balloon, et cetera, et cetera. So this really kind of kicked off the intrigue of life beyond Earth. Of course, more recent times, the internet has been invaded by Area 51 memes inspired by fake or jokes on Facebook at an event to take over the secret military site that they supposedly keep aliens inside. They coined this Storm Area 51. They can't stop all of us. 1.5 million people signed on to that. Much less actually showed up to the desert. So Area 51 is officially named Nevada Test and Training Range at Groom Lake, a high-security open training range for the U.S. Air Force in southern Nevada. To this day is still very secretive. As we talked about, the Clinton administration was the first to acknowledge an existence of it, but the public really found out Area 51 existed in August of 2013 when Dr. Jeffrey Richelson, a senior fellow at George Washington University National Security Archive, submitted a Freedom of Information Act to request in 2005 for information on the CIA's Lockheed U-2 plane reconnaissance program, the secret construction and testing of spy planes that were used to gather intelligence. The request forced the CIA to declassify documents on the history of the U-2 and the A-12 Oxcart program, and the military base where the planes were constructed and tested, which was Area 51. Area 51 over the years has been synonymous with conspiracy theories. A sergeant once told the Reno Evening Gazette about a UFO that was spotted back in 1959. The outlet reported that the Nellis Air Force Base, located 130 miles south of Area 51, had received 2 previous reports in the past 3 weeks of UFO sightings. Those reports just a few after rumors of UFO crashing at Roswell, New Mexico in 1947, which the Roswell airfield later said was a weather balloon. The Air Force began investigating claims of UFO sightings in 1947, which later became known as Project Blue Book. In 1952, by the time Project Blue Book ended in 1969, the Air Force had investigated over 12,000 claims. Meanwhile, people in southern Nevada region continued to report UFO sightings, which in hindsight were probably sightings of top-secret spy planes being constructed. Even so, imaginations have run wild ever since. And then, of course, Area 51 is synonymous in the movies and pulp culture with films like Independence Day, Twilight Zone, X-Files, and of course Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders, which who hasn't watched that and has that on their shelf? I know I do. I actually do kind of like Scooby-Doo. Did you know Casey Kasem did Shaggy's voice? I don't think a lot of people know that. Of course, also there was that weird story where Casey Kasem's wife had his body hidden from the family after he died, and they were trying to find him, and poor Casey Kasem was being dragged all over. Whole weird story of Casey Kasem. You can look it up. And if you don't know who Casey Kasem is, that's a good thing to look up. He'll give you a little information on music history in the United States as well. So, of course, Area 51, it's in the middle of nowhere. So how do employees get in and out of there? They're shuttled in and out of there through the Harry Reid International Airport. And so Janet, or Janet Airlines, are the unofficial names of a highly classified fleet of passenger aircraft operated for the United States Department of Air Force as an employee shuttle to transport military, DoD civilians, and contractor employees to special access program facilities. The airline mainly serves the Nevada Test and Training Range, most notably Area 51. This is done through a private terminal at the Las Vegas Harry Reid International Airport. Interesting enough, in the same interview I had at that airport, I asked about Janet, and what the airport folks had told me is there's a lot of mystery around even how the bills are paid for the Janet airline. So it's interesting, once again, that there's such an enigma even from people that are working near the aircraft. We talked about this a little bit, but the aircraft are generally unmarked aside from a red sheet line along the aircraft's windows. Now, it was very distinctive when it was the 737-200s, obviously, because they have that kind of straight edge tail. But even now, you see this white and red 737, and without TWA around anymore, well, who is it? It's probably Janet. But if you're sitting here, it's interesting because it's not just one. If you're in Las Vegas and you get a hotel room on the Strip and you're watching the Las Vegas airport, you'll see 12, 13, 14 of these aircraft coming and going throughout the day. It's very fascinating. The fleet's Janet call sign is said to stand for just another non-existent terminal, or Joint Air Network Employee Transportation. The first flight from Las Vegas to Area 51 were performed in 1972 by a Douglas DC-6. A second DC-6 was added in 1976, and this type remained in use until 1981. Boeing 737-200s were gradually added in that same decade, which later supplemented by the Air Force's T-43s. It's interesting, I'm actually, like I said, my hotel looks towards Luxor, so I can see Mandalay Bay. As we know, in 2017, there was the Las Vegas shooting at Mandalay Bay, and the gunman had targeted some of the fuel storage tanks at the airport very close to where these Janet aircraft were. So there were some conspiracy theories that part of this may have been his motive and drive as well. Due to the airline's secretive nature, little is known about the organization. It is presently operated by the United States Air Force, by infrastructure and defense contractor Mentum through a company acquisition of AECOM's Defense Contracting Ventures. Goes back to some of the comments we made about who's paying the bills and all this. There's a lot of question marks around it. Due to secrecy, the Janet Airlines board a standalone terminal on the west side of the Harry Reid International Airport. Janet flights operate with a 3-digit flight number and a www prefix. In an official publication, ICAO airline codes, the specific 3-letter designator is listed as being blocked. The primary airline call sign is simply Janet, though flights transition to alternate call signs called Groom call signs. Once transferred over to Groom Lake, and now it's Control. The name typically changes, and the number will be at least 2 digits of the flight number plus 15. For example, the call sign were Janet 412 and were transferred to Groom Lake Control. The call sign would be something like Bunny 27. As of 2015, the Janet fleet consists of 6 Boeing 737-600s painted white with a prominent red sheet line. The fleet is registered to the Department of Air Force, with some earlier aircraft were registered to civilian aircraft leasing corporations. They are no longer operating any of the 737-200s. And this is interesting, probably for conspiracy theorists. All of the Janet 737-600 aircraft were acquired from Air China, and 4 were previously operated by the now defunct China Southwest Airlines before being acquired by the U.S. Air Force operations starting in 2008. They did own a Beechcraft 1900. When I worked for Midwest Airlines for a little bit, we actually had Beech 1900s. If you've ever taken off in a Beech 1900, there's so much thrust, the seat feels like it's going to blow back. I don't know why in my mind I always envision eating a bag of like peanut M&Ms on takeoff in the back of a Midwest airline, and just like the peanuts go like flying out of my hand to the back. So it's just such an immense amount. And the funny thing is, they, by requirements of the FAA, had to play, the standard safety briefing, but the turbo engines were so loud, blah, 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 blah. I guess it's checking a box, but you had no idea what was being said over that PA system. Anyways, Janet Airlines had a Beech 1900. They actually had a crash of this outside a test range when the pilot suffered cardiac arrest. All 5 people, including the pilot, were killed in the accident. A final approach, the pilot reported the runway in sight and entered a circle pattern. The pilot then became incapacitated due to a sudden cardiac death. During the turn, the plane entered a dive before crashing into the ground and bursting into flames as the fuel load ignited. It was later revealed the pilot suffered from high blood pressure and had neglected to report it. So what exactly happened in Area 51? Who's on these aircraft? So if you look at like a Bob Lazar situation, watch a documentary or listen to the podcast, the Joe Rogan podcast. He talks about there being 9 distinct unidentified flying objects, and he worked on one of them. And he's very convincing when you hear him talk about how, there's no really rough edges on these aircraft, that they are designed really kind of molded like what you would anticipate, like what Kindle Wax does or a 3D printer. And so his whole theory behind Area 51 is the government has these different alien vehicles from different solar systems, and they want the top scientists in the United States to reverse engineer the technology. Basically, he was saying the technology works, they can use it, but they want to be able to understand it and then apply it in a mass production situation. Now, that's the Bob Lazar thought. So when you look at a lot of the activity that happens in Area 51, some of these we talked about, the spy aircraft, U-2, etc. Obviously, Area 51 is very remote. They want to isolate and control access in and out of this operation, and they want to protect the identities of those that are working on some of the most classified aircraft in the United States. And so with these flights, right, people are living in the metropolitan area of Las Vegas and flying to Area 51. I will tell a personal story here, and I have taken this with a grain of salt because it's hearsay to me through 2 people. So they have an air traffic control tower at this airport. I was told that a air traffic controller actually had flown out there, worked in the control tower, and was scheduled to come back on the last flight of the day, and missed that flight, and they didn't have another flight till the next morning, so they put him into a barracks, basically, where they said you could stay here, but you can't leave the facility. I always said I take it with a grain of salt. All of these stories, it's hard to say what's reality and what's not. I have some people in my life that are constantly coming to me with conspiracy theories, and they're like, you just believe everything that everybody tells you. And I'm like, no, that's not necessarily the case, but I'm sure there's a mix, and what is real and what's bullshit is probably hard to... The reality of that is you're not going to be able to know what is and what isn't. Now, yeah, absolutely. Not everything that we're told is true. You'd be an idiot to think that. So there's a good mix of it, but not everything that we're told is a lie either. So in this case, you could very much see it going either way, but it is interesting to me, a lot of the secrecy around it. And sometimes I wonder with Area 51, is it good for the government to have kind of a scapegoat of the allure of mystery, of the intrigue? Because you think Area 51 is really not that far from Las Vegas. Why couldn't people just drive and commute in? If they're so worried about people intermingling and conversing, you're going to put them on an aircraft for 45 minutes and they just stare straight ahead and don't talk to each other. So the whole thing seems weird. What is Janet? What is Area 51? And the enigma of it, of all power and all knowing. may be beneficial for certain parties within the government. But it is very interesting. Obviously, you can get on Google and see us that work in the industry looking at the airfield. Obviously, it's a good-sized runway. They have a lot of turnouts. They look like they have a lot of parking areas for high-performance type aircraft. And of course, out here in the desert, it makes a lot of sense for, those type of operations. There actually was one of the pilot that saw the Tic Tac operation I referenced earlier off the Pacific Ocean when he was flying. I believe it was an F-18. He's flying this F-18. He saw this thing out there. But they used to go in the desert, I guess, wear night goggles and just would fly really low to the ground and then purposely mess with people they might see that, you're in a non-populated area, but maybe campers or whatever it is. And he's like, I'm pretty sure I've created false reports for individuals because of the way I was flying that they assume it was a UFO. So Area 51 has a uniqueness to it in the aviation world with Janet, but also back to Kenneth Arnold and his flying saucer. UFOs, unidentified flying objects, they're synonymous with aviation because aviators are usually the ones that spot something unique or weird in the skies. But there's also people on the ground that have a curiosity that drives them into the middle of the desert. In the 1980s, during the peak of the UFO conspiracy theories surrounding Area 51, a group of amateur radio enthusiasts decided to test the limits of their curiosity. Among them was Mark, a seasoned UFO hunter, and Linda, a former military intelligence analyst with a fascination for the unexplained. Equipped with radio scanners, night vision goggles, and a thirst for answers, they embarked on a mission to intercept classified transmissions from within the confines of Area 51. Their journey led them to the outskirts of the base, where they camped in the cover of darkness. As they monitored frequencies, they picked up a peculiar signal, a cryptic coded message that hinted at military operations beyond the public knowledge. Remember, this is before Area 51's existence was even acknowledged by the U.S. government. Excitement mixed with trepidation as they delved deeper into the encrypted conversations, piecing together a narrative of secretive experiments and unacknowledged flights. One fateful night, as the moon cast an eerie glow over the desert landscape, they intercepted a transmission that sent shivers down their spines. A voice, distorted and cold, spoke of an unidentified anomaly within the base, something not of this world. Determined to witness the truth themselves, Mark and Linda ventured closer to the restricted zone. Suddenly the night erupted with blinding display of lights. Unidentified flying objects soared across the sky, defying the laws of physics. Mark and Linda, their hearts pounding, watched in awe as the mysterious craft danced between the stars. Their elation was short-lived. In an instant, the UFOs vanished, leaving the desert in an unsettling silence. As they tried to make sense of what they had witnessed, the night seemed to close around them. The duo retreated, haunted by the realization that they had glimpsed something beyond the veil of government secrecy. The coded transmissions are inexplicable lights, an indelible mark on their lives, raising more questions than answers. To this day, Mark and Linda share their story cautiously, aware of skepticism that surrounds Area 51. Yet the unexplained events they witnessed in the Nevada desert remained etched in their memories. And so, listeners, we find ourselves at the crossroads of fact and fiction, where the mysterious tales of Area 51 blur the lines between reality and the unknown. From the clandestine flights of Janet aircraft to the eerie shadows that dance in the Nevada desert, our journey has traveled the realms of government secrecy, UFO sightings, and the whispers of ancient forces. Today we unveiled the real-life secrets of Area 51, where the U-2 spy planes once sparked UFO hysteria, and the echoes of that era still linger in the desert winds. Whether it's true stories of aerospace engineers communing on Janet aircraft or the fictional escapades of explorers unleashing ancient forces, one thing remains clear: Area 51 is a place where reality and speculation intertwine, creating a tapestry of intrigue that stretches beyond the horizon. As we wrap up this episode of Destination-Aviation, remember that some mysteries are destined to remain unsolved, hidden within the secretive corridors of the Nevada desert. So next time you're in Vegas and you get some time, head over to Harry Reid Airport. The airport nobody told me would ever be called that, but now is. The airport where if you want to wash your hands, make sure that you have 4 sinks. Probably how long it's going to take you to find some soap. But look up into the skies for a Tylenol, departing out of Harry Reid Airport and disappearing into the Nevada skies. I will say, if you were an alien coming to this world, what better place to blend into than Las Vegas? As I got out of my taxi cab today when I arrived, when you get into the corners of Vegas on the Strip or on Fremont Street, you see things. And so what I saw was a Mr. Spock look-alike, a little person, Mr. T, and a female with basically no clothes on. If you came here, kind of like Men in Black type scenario, and you just wanted to blend into the fold and nobody thinks you're quirky or weird, this would be the perfect town for that. So maybe the Janet flights just add to that. And as we conclude on this episode, I realized at the closing of this is actually episode 13. So October 13th. Now I won't publish this probably till October 14th, but October 13th, recording the podcast, and then 13 is our lucky number for this podcast episode number. Spooky month, spooky tales. Have some thoughts about next week's that I think will be captivating. Already starting to see some other emails come in for plane stories, so thank you so much for the listeners there. I'm really enjoying collaborating with people via the podcast, and I love actually talking to people that listen to the show. So thank you for that. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for spending some time here in the Vidora as I have the city landscape in front of me to inspire me into looking up into the skies and wondering, is it a Janet flight? Is it a U2 plane? Maybe it's U2 the band. I just saw them. Maybe it's Bono. Who knows? Question mark. Or maybe it's an alien. All points in between. Until next time, my friends, I will see you down the runway.